Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Wednesday, October the 30th. We are, one day away from Halloween. We're going to do the call-in show tonight for those of you that join us over on Locals. Just letting you know, because tomorrow is Halloween, and I have several very excited children who we're going to go out and do some trick-or-treating with. We're going to keep acting like there's an America out there. That's how we keep it going. That's how we save it. I hope all of you guys are ready for a little bit of fun today, a little bit of vindication, and a little bit of touching back on some of the bases that we have covered down on the show previously. Let's start with a reminder. You guys can join the Locals channel if you want. All the articles that we use every single day in the show are going to be always posted over there, including some of the useful videos that you guys may enjoy. Try to give it to you in one place. It's KyleSeraphin.com. KyleSeraphin.com is how you can go sign up there. You could be a supporter of the program if you are interested. And you can also, by being a supporter, have access to our studio line. You can leave us a message during the week if you are also interested, or you can call in live during the call-in show where we just kind of hang out and we just kind of chat about what's going on in your minds, in your hearts, and how you guys feel about things going on in the news. Today, we're going to start off with a thanks to our buddies over at Catholic Vote. So I want to appreciate them. They have some more news stories that you guys can find on CatholicVote.org. And you go to CatholicVote.org, you can sign up for the loop, or you can just do /loop, and you'll get access to their newsfeed, which is quite good. They put out a new promo recently. We played it the other day. I'm going to play it again for you today now as part of our little read. It's their ad that they've been buying across the spectrum, trying to remind people that if you're a Christian, it should be very difficult for you to justify voting for a Democrat. This is a conversation piece that you can have with those in your circle, in your little sphere of influence. Let them know. This is if they're Christians, they attend a church with you or something like that, and they're thinking about voting for someone other than Trump at the top of the ticket, and Democrats down the line, that they're voting for abortion and the mockery of Christianity. Here's their ad that they put out.
Why is Kamala Harris posing with the founder of an anti-Catholic hate group? They mock our faith.
The sisters are men who dress in lewd imitation of Roman Catholic nuns that intentionally mock and degrade Christians.
A drag queen comes in and kind of pulls Jesus off the cross. For Catholics, it's hard to imagine anything more offensive.
Kamala Harris doesn't care about Christians in this country.
Kamala Harris stands with they, them, not with you. Christians can't stay home November 5th.
Yep, that's the argument. I think it's really simple. I think it's compelling for those of you who are out there that have some of these undecided types. I'm drinking out of my Catholic Vote mug. It's not just about Catholics, though, obviously. This is a Christian call to arms, and we are in that spiritual battle. So I hope you guys consider that. Speaking of spiritual battles, we're going to touch back on a previous story that we had covered down on. I think we had done so accurately, and it continues to be the case. So we're going to start right there. Take a little swig of this coffee, and here we are. This is coming from CBS. A teen is accused of fatally stabbing 3 girls at a UK dance class. You guys remember that story? It happened in Southport. I think 10 people were actually injured, including the adults that tried to protect the children. This was like a Taylor Swift dance class going on, whatever the heck that means. Here's the wild thing. The allegation was made at the time that this guy was doing a terrorist activity. Why? Because he came from this non-English family, at least by root, And who else is sending 17-year-olds in to do knife attacks other than terrorists? So, shockingly, the headline today, the vindication of those who have said it from the beginning, is that this guy had homemade ricin at his house and Al-Qaeda training manuals. That's pretty awful. It's pretty shocking. British politicians getting in on the act here. I think this is Nigel Farage, if my memory serves. But the questions were being asked from the beginning. The really unfortunate part of it is the Crown Prosecution Services is not making all the stuff available. We'll go through the article in just a second here, including some of the important points. But it's just a touch on that base that we talked about. There are problems in the UK. There are problems around the world. And a lot of them come from this open border situation. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in the United States. And the United States is failing to lead and at least be a strong example of the right way to do things. Everybody's getting bullied into doing things that are against their best interest. And when you do that, sometimes children die. Women get raped. People are trafficked. Like, there's an awful lot of terrible outcomes when you don't do the basic things like, lock your doors, secure your border, make sure that you have the integrity of your own security. Anyhow, British politicians giving you a taste of something that they apparently have been asking for, but they don't have the right to know. Sounds a lot like our DOJ in some ways.
In the wake of the horrific murder of those 3 girls in Southport in July of this year, I asked some questions saying, please tell us the truth. Stop the online speculation. Well, it's taken a long time to find out more about the individual. He's now been charged, believe it or not, under the Biological Weapons Act because the police have found ricin in his home. He's been charged under the Terrorism Act, alleged to have downloaded Al-Qaeda terrorist materials. But the murder of the girls and the serious injury of the others, that is still being treated as a non-terror incident because they don't know what the motives were. We've also been told this afternoon there are other facts that we don't yet know because the Crown Prosecution Service say they will come out in good time in court and are not to be discussed now. So that's all right then. That all makes sense to you, doesn't it? Yes, absolutely.
That was sarcasm for those of you that don't speak British. All right, here's the primary sort of paragraph in this article. Axel Rudakamadaba, 18 years old, is charged with murdering 3 girls, stabbing 10 other people in July of this year. He also produced a deadly poison ricin, which was later found in his home by the Merseyside, I think it's pronounced, police. The police found a computer file with an Al-Qaeda training manual entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, an Al-Qaeda training manual. Man, I mean, if you're ever going to plant something, that would be the thing to do, right? Wouldn't you want it to have Jihad, Tyrants, and Al-Qaeda training manual all in the same title? But all that being said, of course this person was a radical. No normal, sane person runs into a dance class where they don't have any association or any tie and stabs children. No normal people stab children. It reminds me of the video we saw the other day I showed it to my father actually, of what looked like a grandfather in France and some skinny jeans wearing invader slapping a baby. You've got to be a bit nuts to think that's going to be acceptable. You can't have the basic values of Westerners. It's a non-Western thing to go and abuse kids like that. Particularly, like, you see a lot of the child abuse in this country, in our country. It's almost always boyfriend of mom, like a non-biological relation. It's rare, but it does happen that people abuse their own kids, particularly men. But it's just like, it's much more common for it to be someone like this on the outside. Someone who just doesn't share values of the place you're going. And the United States is kind of aspiring to be more like Britain in the tolerance, in the invasion, in the making excuses for, in the enforcement of social media. We talked about it with Sean Witzman the other day, didn't we? On our little call-in show, he mentioned that the UK is Facebook in real life. So you can actually be charged with crimes for thinking, for speaking. They don't have the same sort of freedoms we do. And it seems like America is trending that direction, which is usually called fascism. I have a really interesting historical video I'm going to play you guys in a bit about fascism. I'm sort of obsessed with that word because that was the closing argument. We thought that was the closing argument about Donald Trump, that he is a fascist, so saith John Kelly. in a conversation that probably never happened. But the term fascism is always being abused. We also took that historical journey down, seeing that even going back to 1943, the American Communist Party recommended using the term fascism because of its unpleasant aroma to the American people and trying to associate your political opponents with that term, and then repeat it enough that that lie becomes true. So fascism is something that I'm a little bit fixated on. We thought that was the closing argument right up until Joe Biden came up with a slightly better one, which is even funnier. I have some additional stuff that I want to play for you guys because, well, before we do that, let's do the Harris sort of analogy. There's a video that was released from one of the sheriff department in Florida, and we'll play it. It's actually Steve Friend's sheriff, so this is local to one of our Suspendables buddies. This is the direct outcome of having a border czar that didn't do a job. You guys have probably heard or seen this already. Let me see if I can throw it up here. Colin Rugg reported and put out this body cam video. The sheriff's department actually were the ones that shared it. This is Volusia County. The sheriff's name is Mike Chitwood. A woman praising God after Florida police saved her from being raped by an illegal alien who applied for asylum just one day earlier. I'll play you guys the video. The most interesting thing is the backstory to this video. At least to me, it's interesting. Apparently, this is a normal thing. My wife used to work in mental health counseling, and apparently women call 911 if they are in a domestic abuse situation. And apparently this was also her wherewithal to do in this situation. The idea is you call 911 and pretend to order a pizza. And that's what this Florida woman did. Called up, almost 4 a.m., so sometime after 3:30 in the morning, and it's like 911, what's your emergency, or 911 police or fire is usually the way they answer, and they say, yeah, I'd like to order a large pepperoni pizza, I'd like to order a large cheese pizza, and then the operator will say, ma'am, this is 911, do you know who you called, or something to that effect, and then they'll say, yes, and they'll say, okay, are you trying to report a crime, and they'll say, yes. And then it's like, can you deliver to here? And so they play along like they're doing a pizza order in order to get the 911 dispatcher in a sort of a surreptitious call or sort of a ruse call to get police out there. That's what happened with these sheriff's deputies. They responded, and this is what they found. We're going to show you the video of it. You'll be able to hear very clearly what's happening as well if you're just listening. But if you want to find it, we're about 15 minutes into the show, and you can find this all over social media right now, too. This guy looks like a pretty nasty character. She has obviously a Hispanic accent, so my assumption is that if this guy, he might speak English, but if he doesn't, she probably speaks Spanish as well. They were out having dinner. He had her go and have some drinks. Sheriff explains this at the end.
Hey!
He's trying to rape me. Can you help
Get off her now!
Help me!
Get off her now!
Give us the channel.
Thank God! Thank you!
Don't you f***ing move! Don't you f***ing move!
Come here, dude. Come here. You're good. 21 says to clear the channel. Come here. We're good. We're here.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus.
We got a male secured.
He's trying to rape me.
Copy a Florida tag, please.
Oh, thank you, Lord.
And when you watch the video, if you're a father, if you're a grandfather, if you're a brother, and you hear those screams coming from our victim, it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up.
Okay, we're here now, okay? Hey, we're here. Just catch your breath. He's got him.
The victim in this case said she had known her assailant, that they had gone into the fernery to drink a couple drinks, alcoholic beverages, and that's all it was supposed to be. However, during this outing, he did a line of cocaine, and she said he did a 180, and he became extremely violent and wouldn't let her go and tried to rape her. The video, again, speaks for itself. The suspect in this case is Luis Hernandez Mañeo, 27-year-old male who's in this country illegally, who the day before the incident applied for asylum. He's now sitting in our jail with 3 felony counts against him, and the Border Patrol has lodged a detainer against him. I am so proud, number one, of our victim for having the wherewithal and keep her wits as to able to get that information to our communications folks for being able to decipher what was going on and use technology to put us, the deputies, in the general area of where she was. And then obviously you can see the deputy's response in taking this scumbag into custody.
Yeah, all of that is all done well. The sad thing is that she was in that situation in the first place. You'll notice he said asylum laws. That's what this guy went through. That is the loophole that is being used. We know it. We are hearing it. But it's important to remember that there is a thing called asylum, just like there is a thing called fascism. Like, these words actually have meanings until Democrats get a hold of them, which is really strange. They're manipulating the language in order to get their preferred outcome. We actually talked about it yesterday with Tyler O'Neill. There's a couple of takeaways I had from our conversation. One of them is that we don't mind the idea of people coming to the United States, but a path to citizenship is not misusing the word asylum as written under U.S. law. And there's also a a national or an international definition of this. You have to actually stop in the first country. This was the talking point that was being brought up by Trump early on. That this concept of seeking political asylum, it has a couple of different checkboxes that are being completely ignored. We were hearing about them called refugees and asylum seekers, but none of those are real terms. They're not being properly used. To be an asylum seeker, you stop in the first safe country and you make the allegation that a return to the country of origin that you have would result in your imprisonment, your death, some sort of negative outcome. When I think of asylum, I think of people defecting in a Russian MiG fighter or a USSR MiG fighter and landing at a U.S. military base after indicating that they wanted to do this. It's so critical to remember that these words had meanings until they were completely abused. And we used to use the term illegal alien, and then we started using the term illegal immigrant, which already softens those edges, and now they're calling them migrants. A migrant is someone who comes here and then leaves. We can have migrants. We have migrant and guest worker programs in the United States. They're the people that Nancy Pelosi needs to pick the crops. Sounds really racist since that's what it is. But there's a thing. It's a process that you can apply for and become a migrant worker on a guest worker visa to the United States. We allow for that. And you can take that money that you make and you can go home. You can do so legally. You can't say that because your husband might beat you back in Nicaragua, or that you might have a, some sort of cartel vendetta that's happening in Mexico or in El Salvador or wherever else, or Venezuela. You take your pick, Colombia. You can't say that because there's some organized crime activity and that things are generally dangerous, or that you want a better life, that you are seeking asylum or that you are a refugee. These words have legal definitions and we've completely lost them. They're just soft on U.S. law. They're not interested in maintaining the specific legality, which I think is a violation of the oath that they take. Kamala Harris has actually done the same oath that I did, saying that she would protect and serve, that she would defend the United States Constitution, which is to say the laws that this country functions under. Tim Walz as well, both in the military and when he was doing it in Minnesota. It's interesting that these folks, they don't seem all that interested in the United States. Maybe that's why this story came out in the Daily Mail. If you guys didn't catch it, I'm going to share it with you right now. Quite interesting. Daily Mail, UK publication, says Kamala Harris's VP choice, Tim Walz, had a secret fling with the daughter of a top Chinese communist official during a teaching stint in China. He had a romance with a woman named Jenna Wang. I think that's how you pronounce that from my time working the Chinese threat for the Bureau. I had to constantly be reminded that W-A-N-G is pronounced Wang, not Wang, even though it's funnier. And speaking of Wang, I think many of us are quite surprised that Tim Walz's choice in romantic partners overseas was a female. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. I tend to agree with the Tucker Carlson thing. Watching his mannerisms doesn't lead me to believe that. But apparently in 1989, he started a fling that eventually became romantic, that also became sexual, with a woman's who had a father in the Chinese Communist Party. And that was like an actual official in the party. They said that as lovers, they couldn't risk holding hands or showing public affection. Wong's dad was a high-ranking figure in the party who would disavow her for fraternizing with a Westerner. But their romance blossomed behind closed doors. They sipped tea, made love, and listened to George Michael's hits. One of the funny little details in this is that Careless Whispers was one of their favorite songs together. Some of these details are fairly specific and they're fairly time accurate, I would think. She thought that she was going to get married. She was 24 years old. She had a dream of moving to the United States with him, but instead he kept her behind closed doors. She felt like she was being treated like a prostitute, which left her feeling angry and suicidal. She's now 59 years old, whilst obviously about 60 years old. So the time frame seems to line up, and this is pictures of them on the screen together. During this meeting, she was a teacher at a neighboring school that taught English, and he continued to praise her English abilities and said that if he closed his eyes, he could hear her. It sounded like she was from America, which I'm sure is not true. She thought he was very handsome. She loved his eyes and his big mouth. Now his big mouth spews lies. And he talks about being a knucklehead. Just very interesting that this stuff kind of is popping up at the end here. Everybody sort of knew that there was a piece of his story that didn't check out. And here's another little piece of it that I thought was quite interesting. Apparently, after he left, he came back. He joined the military at some point, or was at least associated with the National Guard for, 24 years. So he was in and out of that. They avoided shows of affection in case it got back to Wong's father. His name is Bin Hui, or something to that effect. He was an important Chinese official and a chairman of the labor union in her native city. He would travel to Hong Kong and Macau on weekends, cities that were more or less inaccessible for all except the Chinese elites, and bring back Western-style luxuries like blue jeans, Ray-Ban sunglasses, and jewelry. She said he couldn't sing when he tried to dance. He found it hard. She could tell that he was in the military. Those are the kind of people that get targeted. Those are the kind of people that show that they have vulnerabilities. And when you have vulnerabilities, you find yourself honed in on by intel services and they lean on you. Whether that happened or not, I don't know. But I know it's a possibility. And I know that he exposed himself to that. And generally speaking, even in the 80s, there are places that you can't go when you're in the military. When I signed up, they gave us a no-go. You can't travel without notifying your command. And there were places we couldn't go to Mexico. One of my best buddies, one of my best friends in the world, had a mother that lived alternately in Mexico and in Colorado. She spent dual time there. She took care of a family member back in Mexico. Legally, she had the ability to do that. And he couldn't go and see his grandmother because he was a service member and he was restricted from being part of that. This is just what happens when you sign up for the military. There are some freedoms that you forego. There are restrictions that you take on. There are places in cities that you go that are literally listed out for enlisted guys. It says you may not attend anything at the following bar. I think there's one called Sharky's outside of Fort Bragg that was listed as a no-go, both for the Army and for the Air Force. And when I first actually took on TDY assignments there, and we had young guys that were working, I would jump in with my team sergeant. We would drive to all the locations so we could kind of see what they look like and say, okay, these are the no-go zones. This is what they look like. This is why. And then we would brief our guys on the weekends. This is a standard thing. The idea that you could travel to China, teach English, and do this on the side, maybe there's a little bit bigger restriction. You guys can let me know in comments, actually. I'd be really interested. Does the National Guard give you a lot more leeway to do this? I see National Guards people doing things that you'd never see active duty do. But it's kind of wild to watch it. And it keeps going on. And like I said, I think more and more of this information is going to keep coming out. Do we really want this guy sitting in the White House with the TS clearance at this point? He did bad enough. It seems like he did bad enough. Just being a guardsman and being the governor of Minnesota. We're going to do another sort of thing. Bad enough. We mentioned earlier on the thing that's going on in the UK. This, I think, will be kind of interesting. It sort of indicates the way our structure is going. This is a different story of whistleblowers. Catherine Herridge used to be at CBS, was let go, has done some pretty good stories. We've got this one. This was probably not going to make it into the mainstream. This is something Gary Shapley, who was an IRS whistleblower that was doing the investigation into Hunter Biden's taxes, and I can't remember his first name, but Special Agent Ziegler. Both these guys still have jobs, as far as I can tell, but they're not being treated very well. At least they got a paycheck. It's better than my buddy Garrett O'Boyle. I think this little 30, is like about a 90-second intro. There's more to this video. I'll post it up on the Locals channel as well, so you guys can kind of track it. But they're making the allegation that not only did the FBI, but also the DOJ and the IRS knew from the beginning that the Hunter Biden laptop stuff was real and legit. The thing that we'll get into is their discussion of sensitive investigative matters, which I'm going to give you a little bit of commentary on just for your awareness. It is and it is not a problem at the same time. So we'll get some little shade onto that in just a sec. Let's just listen to them in their own words talking about their treatment.
When you received this email from your IRS supervisor after Hunter Biden's guilty plea, thank you for your commitment to the mission, which culminated in a great conviction.
Those are words that are not supported by the actions of the agency.
What you're saying is that within the IRS, there is disparate treatment of American taxpayers.
What they call it is sensitive investigations.
But sensitive investigation sounds like code for powerful elite people.
There's a list in the Internal Revenue Manual that says what a sensitive person is, and it's exactly that.
There was no question in your mind the big guy was Joe Biden.
We corroborated the big guy was Joe Biden, yes.
We knew that the laptop was real. DOJ knew that the laptop was real.
FBI knew the laptop was real.
There were a lot of overt investigative steps that we were not allowed to take because we had an upcoming election.
When we were doing the interviews, the prosecutors specifically told us that they didn't want to ask about the big guy because they knew it was Joe Biden.
You came forward as whistleblowers. Your information was accurate, yet you're sitting here today with us alleging that you've been punished every step of the way by the government bureaucracy.
IRS is just has a smothering blanket on me, hoping that I quit, that they find some way to terminate me or commit suicide or something.
And I'm up against a machine that has millions of dollars, that has the ability to fight me.
People have to have confidence justice is going to be administered fairly, regardless of who you are.
Right. And we don't right now. We don't for a variety of reasons. That's the argument about what weaponized government looks like. That's the way that I see it. These guys are talking about sensitive investigative matters. Those are real things. Those are actually not a bad idea. There are some people who should be given a little bit more leeway and should have a little bit tighter scrutiny over being investigated simply because investigating them in and of itself can subvert the processes of our political system. They can suppress speech at a level that is different than it might be with other people. So there are certain people inside the FBI that get this internal label. And interesting, this relates to my story as coming forward. One of the first things that that we brought forward after the sort of parents at school board allegations, the allegations that the attorney general had maybe lied under oath on some of the stuff that I had given at that time. The second big thing that people saw was that I went to Project Veritas with information. What we actually did is we went to Congress with that information. And then I realized that I didn't work for the FBI anymore and that they were steamrolling a company that I don't necessarily agree with all the time. I don't think their tactics are great. I think they did some okay work. I think that James O'Keefe is not good at what he does, but he has a right to a First Amendment just as much as anybody else. What you'll find is the thing about the suspendables, the reason why we are always at odds with people on the left and the right is that we're motivated by principle, including principles for people that we dislike. Like I personally dislike James O'Keefe quite a bit. I think he's a detestable person, but he shouldn't have to have the DOJ with all of its might, as you just heard them say, an organization with an unlimited budget, essentially, smother you, come after you, make allegations and tie you up in court cases that you cannot defend against. When in fact, the FBI, another multi-billion-dollar agency, and the investigative wing of DOJ, when those people are saying the opposite behind closed doors. And so very specifically, Project Veritas was listed as a SIM, what Gary Shapley just talked about, a sensitive investigative matter. And that is a catch-all phrase that limits and restricts access to certain case files for people who are politicians, for prying eyes, for people that are journalists, for people that are clerics or work in some sort of religious capacity, and for people that are in an academic space. All of those people have a much higher threshold when it comes to, can we do this and are we doing this for the right reasons? That's the idea behind the sensitive investigative matter, behind the SIM process. And so there's various different hoops, and depending on the profile, if you wanted to go after, let's say, a Donald Trump, you would have a much higher profile than if you were going to go after someone of lower stature in society. And that's not actually wrong, Because what it does is it acknowledges the truth on the ground, that some people, not that they have more rights, but scrutiny of them is more damaging to your reputation should that information come out. And so the Bureau does it, and the DOJ does it, and I know now that the IRS does it, but that makes perfect sense. Some people get treated slightly differently, and that's not surprising to us. It may not be the most egalitarian situation. It may not be the most American idea, but it is pragmatic. So I don't have that big problem. But what I do have a problem with is when you're doing the thing that you're supposed to do properly, which is to say you've adjudicated that somebody is news media, that somebody is an academic, that somebody is a politician of whatever note, and then you turn around and you go, oh, now we're going to argue the opposite in open court and know that nobody from the defensive team, from the people that we are prosecuting, are ever going to find out that we called them a sensitive investigative matter. And that's what happened with Project Veritas. That's how it worked out. The DOJ said that nobody would consider them a journalist, and the FBI considered them to be journalists. That seems problematic. So I'm at odds with people because I can think two things at once. I think a lot of you can as well. You can look around and know that just because you don't like someone doesn't mean that they don't have rights as an American. That includes people on every side. I want to give them the fairest look. A lot of times they don't want to give themselves that fair look. You know who's not fair? Jim Comey. From everything we can tell, a man who basically snowed himself with his own cult of personality. That's going to be the story we do next. Before we do that, we're going to say a little reminder to you all that Patriot Coolers is our favorite. They are the OG sponsor of the Kyle Seraphin Show. I am now carrying right now the Major, which actually has some dirt on it. Looks like one of my kids took this thing outside. You can hear it. The ice is still in here. This is a 40-ounce handled tumbler with multiple ways to drink it. You can drink it out of a straw if you are so inclined, which I have right now for liquids. You can drink it out of a sipping thing here on the top, and it'll keep it spill proof. It's a screw-on lid. It's an outstanding product. It feels like it could be used as a weapon. I didn't know that I always wanted a handle on my big tumblers, by the way. And then I got one with it. They sent me it, and I was like, oh, that's what it's all about. If you guys have not tried them out, they are comparable in price, but they also can be customized under the Kyle Seraphin collection, which is just the suspendables collection, with our badge, with our flag. You guys don't have to be a graphic designer. They're already set up, and all you got to do is go to the link in our show description. Otherwise, you can go to patriotcoolers.com for any of the bigger items. Use that promo code KYLE like we use on everything else. Do it in all caps wherever you use it. KYLE. Save yourself 10%, and it's free shipping for $50 more. Just order one for you and a loved one. Great gifts as the holidays kind of come up this way. All right, let's do Jim Comey because this is pretty shocking stuff. It's not surprising. It's just shocking that it happened. This is reporting from Kerry Pickett, the Washington Times. Little discussion. For what it's worth, people are asking online, they're like, oh, is there any documentation behind this? The odds are is no. The odds are there's no documentation. A whistleblower says James Comey, had the FBI infiltrate Trump's 2016 campaign with what are referred to as honeypot operations, allegedly off-the-books investigations that predate the FBI's Russia collusion probe, which was known as Crossfire Hurricane, which was a major problem and a serious black eye against the FBI. A lot of people who worked for the Bureau no longer work for the Bureau, and the stink that they have from their former agency and the reason that they won't tell people that they used to work there is because of Crossfire Hurricane. The House Judiciary Committee is examining a whistleblower report that the FBI targeted Donald Trump soon after he announced his presidential campaign in June of 2015 in an off-the-books operation ordered directly by FBI Director James B. Comey that predates Crossfire Hurricane. This is damning stuff. The question is how credible is it? We'll assess that in just a second. An FBI agent involved in the probe revealed the off-the-books criminal investigation on Tuesday in a protected disclosure sent to the committee. The whistleblower disclosure said 2 female FBI undercover agents infiltrated Trump's campaign in 2016 at a high level and were directed to act as quote-unquote honeypots while traveling with Mr. Trump and his campaign staff on the trail. They specifically targeted George Papadopoulos, which is quite interesting. The agent personally knew, this is the whistleblowing agent, that Comey ordered an FBI investigation against Trump and that Comey personally directed it. According to the disclosure, in the off-the-books investigation, it did not appear to target a specific crime, but was more what the agents would describe as a fishing expedition to find something incriminating about Mr. Trump. You'll remember, for those of you that have been following my little story for a bit, Again, all these things end up touching the same base. The first time that I talked with Dan Bongino, and also in a kind of a poignant moment that they edited for the movie Police State, the thing that I am saying is that this Stalinistic tactic, show me the man and I will show you the crime, is the way that the FBI investigates things when they are working in the intelligence sphere. This is saying that it's a criminal investigation with no alleged criminal activity. There's no predication. In order to get a criminal case on file, it is required that you articulate very specifically a federal crime, right? There has to be a allegation or there has to be information that a federal crime has occurred, and that's what the investigation is based on. That's what we call predication. This whistleblower says that there was, in fact, no predication for this particular crime, or for any crime, and that this particular investigation being discussed, this undercover operation, was not disclosed to the Justice Department Inspector General, Michael Horowitz. How easy is it for us to believe that right now? For me, it's very easy, because it's kind of like the argument that Jim Carrey made in Liar, Liar when he objects to the judge. And he says, "Objection, Your Honor." And the judge says, on what grounds? And he said, "Because that totally destroys my case." If you're making the argument to the Inspector General that you are not wildly politically motivated, which is something that I said to Project Veritas in 2022, in May of 2022, something that I said to Dan Bongino in September of 2022. If your argument is we are not political, the way that Kyle Seraphin has said, the way that Steve Friend has said, the way that Marcus Allen and George Hill and Garrett O'Boyle have said, and a couple of others whose names you don't hear, this particular whistleblower is making the same allegation that this is a political move because there is no other reason to go after somebody with no predicate. And so, do we trust this? Do we think that this is reasonable? Because we want to. Our goal is to be skeptics here, right? That's what I always talk about. So I'm a skeptic. The problem is, the person who brought this to Kerry Pickett is the attorney that represents about a dozen or more whistleblowers, who has been known to be honest, who has been on this program more than once. And you can go back and find him. If you want to find the stories, when we talk to Kurt, you guys will find out that he pretty much has the goods on these people and people trust him. The odds are is that this person now no longer works for the FBI and so has either retired or is close enough to retirement that they feel like, or they're being targeted. That's the reason why people come forward with this. You notice they didn't come forward 8 years ago when this happened. Why? Because it was wrong then. And it was wrong when the Biden administration took over and started targeting people. Why bring it up now? There's only two possibilities. One, they are now in a safe place and they think they can do so. You do have the right to become a official, statutorily defined whistleblower, whether you are a current or former employee. But the two reasons people come forward is they find themselves in a safe place and they think financially they're no longer going to be attacked. They're not going to lose their job, their paycheck. They're not going to get thrown out on their ass like Kyle Seraphin or Steve Friend. That's a thing. And the second reason is because they've been targeted, which is why other people have come forward to Kurt. You guys can go find the episodes we did with Kurt Suzdak. He has a really, really amusing sense of humor to me. The last piece of this, which we keep seeing, is that some folks out there seem like they have an instinct. And I've had people ask me, like, there's no indication that the FBI or the intelligence agencies see Donald Trump winning. The thing that I do see is that I've been told that people are scrambling for their golden parachutes. They are setting up their retirements right now. That they see the same thing that the American people see, that overwhelmingly Donald Trump has more popularity than Kamala Harris. Overwhelmingly. They don't have any other way to see it. Here's a little example of how popular Kamala Harris is, what a dimwit she is. And I there's unlimited numbers of clips of this. Nobody wanted to endorse her right up until the point where they had no other choice. Michael Scott is the manager at, what is he the manager in? Office, what is the Office movie? He's the paper company manager. Why can I not think of the name of it? Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. She does this sort of Michael Scott thing where she does this terrible manager thing where people are doing one thing and then he says something really stupid. I'm going to have to look up the name of that stupid show. Someone put it in the chat. The name of the show where Michael Scott is the manager of Dunder Mifflin. Yes, The Office. I knew it was called, for some reason I was thinking Office Space. The Office. Here's an Office moment for Kamala Harris at her own rally.
Each of you to shout your own name. Do that.
because it's about all of us. It's about all of us. And listen, I have fought my whole career to put the people first.
What? All of you shout your own name. Kamala, Kamala. Okay, shout your own name now. Your own name, your own name. That's the only way that would work. How is everyone going to shout their own name? There's like a couple hundred people there. What a... That's how you end up. Look, these people were terrible. How come nobody came forward earlier? They got targeted. Or they retired. And they're no longer scared of this. But I do hear that people are starting to scramble. Doesn't mean that they're going to let him take office, even if he does get the popular vote. It's got to be such an overwhelming mandate. Maybe it will be. That would be great. And even though the odds are, like, if anybody who's following what looks like on social media, if anyone's following what it looks like just talking to like regular people, you're seeing people wearing Trump hats to San Francisco 49ers games. I saw a lady get kicked out for that yesterday. Apparently, we've got to do this thing where Donald Trump has to have a secret plan to steal the election. I'm also seeing the same things you guys are about people in PA trying to show up to the polls and getting kicked out, even though the governor said that they could go early and they could stay there until 5. And if they were in line, they would get a chance to vote. Like, the lines are overwhelming. Like, the turnout seems like it's going to be really, really big, which is good. I don't know if it'll be enough. Dan Goldman thinks that Donald Trump is actually just setting it up so he can steal it. Here's some crazy conspiracy. You can say crazy conspiracies as long as you are a Democrat and you're on CNN. Despise this guy. Like, what are the dumbest reps? It's another example of someone, by the way, he used to work at DOJ, didn't he? He was a U.S. prosecutor. Dan Goldman coming up with his own conspiracy that he's allowed to say on CNN, and nobody fact checks him. They just let him go because they want it to be true too.
Donald Trump hinted yesterday in his speech that he has some secret with Speaker Mike Johnson. Now, you wonder, why did Donald Trump come to New York 9 days before the election? This state is going to go to Kamala Harris. And the answer is that the House really runs through New York. There are 7 races that could go either way in the House, and that will likely determine the majority. And make no mistake, the House, we get sworn in on January 3rd. On January 6th, the certification of the Electoral College will happen again, and as we know from 2021. Whoever is in control of the House, of Congress, will be able to have a lot of say on what happens on January 6th. And I suspect, we don't know, but I suspect Donald Trump's little secret plan with Mike Johnson is a backup plan for when he loses, and he tries to go to the House of Representatives to throw out the Electoral College, the certification from the states, and have the House of Representatives under the leadership and the control and the gavel for Mike Johnson, and try to overturn this election. It was the exact reverse in January 6, 2021. You had Mike Pence, the vice president, who was presiding over the joint session, but you had Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, who were presiding over Congress. If it's the reverse, the Republicans have a lot more opportunity and a lot more possibilities for overturning this election. And that's what this was about yesterday. That, I believe, is what Donald Trump's secret with Mike Johnson was. And that's why he's here, is because the House majority runs through New York.
Yeah, the House majority runs through New York, and that's why it's totally not because he owns property in the city of New York, that he's from New York, that he is a New Yorker, that he is an icon, a guy who actually earned his money in New York, not like inherited it, like Levi Strauss heir Dan Goldman. But you're allowed to throw out all of your conspiratorial things. He softly made the argument, by the way, that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer saved America. But that's his theory. You're allowed to have crackpot theories if you're on the left. And apparently you're also allowed to investigate your political rivals. Jim Comey, who was a Republican, right? He was a Republican. How interesting that he ordered an infiltration of a political campaign. Jim Comey, who looks like a Biden-Harris action figure in the last and now the next. I've seen him in the last year or so dressed up with his Kamala Harris mug and his t-shirts and all this crazy stuff, totally nonpartisan. And the fact that he was able to order off the books, I don't know how you would do it. This story actually goes a little bit further. I want to read one more little thing because this is kind of like a nugget that makes me, you know this is coming from the FBI when they say this kind of stuff. But the nugget in here that kind of like tweaked me up, it said that two things. One, it wasn't in the system called Sentinel, which is where the FBI builds case files. So there is no Sentinel record of this particular investigation. No official case file. It was personally directed by Jim Comey. So they were running, I don't even know how you do that, but obviously if you're the FBI director, you have some different authorities than an average agent would have. The second thing is the disclosure says Deputy Director David Bowditch and the current Deputy Director, Paul Abate, the Assistant Director in charge of the Washington Field Office at the time, he was my boss, Paul Abate, were also involved in helping Comey execute this secret probe. It's been very interesting for those of us that worked under David Bowditch, who was the DD, the number 2 at the FBI during this time. He has a very good reputation. I've met him maybe one time. I flew on a plane with him and, I sat in the back and he sat in the front, and he carried a gun, which is very unusual for some of the senior executives. He had a 2-man little detail that rolled with him as kind of like special assistants. He seemed like a decent dude. I pinged him with something kind of funny and he responded like a regular guy would. He retired very unceremoniously and he works for Disney, which is interesting. He kind of seems like he got his 30 pieces of silver. I don't have anything particularly ugly to say about David Bowditch, but it's interesting that Bowditch was named in this disclosure. There's 2 other little pieces in there. I mentioned Papadopoulos being targeted, so that was part of it. The 2 other things that I thought were really interesting is that apparently this thing was blown open because a newspaper obtained a photograph of one of the undercover agents and was about to publish said photograph. It was going to expose this operation. And the FBI's press office, this should be a note to you if you work in the journalistic sphere, the FBI will lie to you. They are not required to tell you the truth. And they lied. Per this disclosure, they lied and said that this was not an FBI employee, but rather an informant who would be killed if the photograph was published. And the press office was able to dissuade the newspaper of publishing the picture of the undercover agent. These are really specific pieces of information. And then the employee said that they personally observed 1 or more employees in the FBI being directed to never discuss the operation, never discuss it again, including with people who were involved in the operation. That sounds very credible to me. Mostly because I know the source, and the source is the attorney that would deal with this. Like I said, 2 possibilities. 1, this person is now retired and thinks they're safe, or 2, this person was retaliated against for something else and decided to bring it forward. Neither of them are great. Neither of them are particularly courageous for whatever it's worth, but I do hope that we get to the bottom of all of that. All right, you saw on the Chiron, if you were watching, sort of the lead thing that caused me to put this thumbnail up. There's Donald Trump, the garbage man, sitting in the back of a waste management truck, taking out the trash. We're going to talk about the whole nonsense of the Madison Square Garden rally turning into a talking point for the Harris campaign about Donald Trump thinks that people in Puerto Rico are garbage. That's not what was said. So Kill Tony did he's a roast comedian. And here is what he actually said, lest you guys think it's somewhere else. This is him allegedly calling people in Puerto Rico garbage. What he says is he's making a joke about there actually is an island of garbage in the middle of the ocean. He calls it Puerto Rico as a joke. Puerto Rico has a lot of trash problems. They had billions of dollars in federal monies to come in and solve some trash problems, and those things apparently were not solved because there's a ton of corruption in Puerto Rico. So he's making this joke. Go figure, a comedian making a joke when that's what his job is. Here's what he actually said, lest you be offended. I also have the follow-on, which we played you the other day, about him kind of going to Hillary Clinton. He's just roasting people. This is what he does.
Republicans are the party with a good sense of humor. Free speech is under attack, people. I host a show, and each week I get updates what words we're allowed to use and not use anymore. It's happening right now the past few years. It's a real thing. And, used to be able to tell people to Google stuff. My mom's a boomer in the state of Ohio, and there's no convincing her of anything. She's eating the cats. She's eating the dogs. They're eating the pets up there. It is absolutely wild times. It really, really is. And you know, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
And the crowd kind of half laughs, half kind of goes, ooh, and he goes, okay, all right, we're getting there. His whole thing is to like say things that are inflammatory, which is why he does the little set about, he talks about the, you know, the NFL. I think we should have it all year long. And then that gives him a setup to do the Travis Kelce joke, which we played the other day. So here it is.
I don't know about you guys, but I think that Travis Kelce might be the next O.J. Simpson. Feels good in here. The other side's got a lot of crazy endorsements. Swift, Eminem, Leo DiCaprio, Beyonce. Every day the Democratic Party looks more and more like a P. Diddy party.
Okay, that's what he does. That's his shtick. So they've honed in on it. The closing argument is Donald Trump supporters are mean to Puerto Ricans and Latinos, and they call people that are Latino garbage. And Joe Biden couldn't be left on the sidelines, so Joe Biden got together, whatever sensibilities he had, he sat in front of this garbage webcam, and he put together this little discussion for this group called Voto Latino, which is a group that is also really sketchy and trying to like pay people to get out to vote. And here's what he had to say about you, probably, if you're a Donald Trump supporter.
Oh, the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable, and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done,
You catch that? Yeah. First of all, he's completely senile. He's completely unable to maintain it. This must have been too late, and they didn't get his dose correct. But he's from Puerto Rico. He almost says that the Puerto Rico that I'm from, and then he was like, the home state of Delaware. He mealy mouths his way through saying the only garbage I see floating out there are his supporters, his being Donald Trump. That's right. This is their deplorables moment. Half the country is a basket of deplorables. The only people that I see that are garbage, or the only garbage I see floating out there, are Donald Trump supporters. Here it is again, one more time. Listen to it. They've made a correction, so I'm going to show you what he says as he tried to correct.
Oh, the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable.
His demonization is unconscionable. So then the Twitter intern got out there and put this out. Earlier today, I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Donald Trump supporter at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think of to describe it. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say. We know, but we heard what you actually said too. The comments at the rally don't reflect who we are as a nation. Okay, so that's kind of fun. What do Democrats think about this kind of stuff? How do they feel about their boy going out there and calling half Americans garbage? It turns out that's not a really winning message as a closing argument in a campaign. It's actually worse than having a comedian say something about Puerto Rico being a nation that is a garbage heap, which is not objectively, obviously false. There's some truth to it. Here's Josh Shapiro, who probably should have been on the VP kick since he wasn't out there banging like Chinese Communist Party members, making his little taste. He's not interested in being associated with Joe Biden.
Governor, first off, just what's your response to that comment from President Biden, where it sounds like he's calling Trump supporters there garbage?
Yeah, look, I had not heard that until now, Caitlin, so I'm kind of giving you my fresh reaction to it. I would never insult the good people of Pennsylvania or any Americans, even if they chose to support a candidate that I didn't support.
Oh, I don't want to be associated with that. You know what's even funnier and more telling is when Jon Stewart gets in there. The Daily Show has been famously far left, I think. But they also know what comedy is. And so I think comedians right now are at this weird moment in time where if they want to do funny and they want to do comedy the way that comedy is meant to be, which means you're going to hurt some feelings, that's what comedy is. If you go listen to most of these people, roast comedians, crowd work, dealing with hecklers, the entire industry for people that are really working comics is all about you say something nasty to me, I turn it around and I make fun of you and I make you feel bad, but I also make you laugh. That's what it's about. This guy's whole shtick is that he just says kind of flat affect, low-key insults nonstop. That's what a roast is. That's what Kill Tony does. Here is Jon Stewart defending comedy, because Jon Stewart was a comedian in the 90s, which is kind of what we used to expect, that comedians might hurt your feelings.
Raise the alarms.
The opening act, grabbing headlines for all the wrong reasons. A comedian who offered unfunny, racist, cringeworthy jokes.
Basically calling Puerto Ricans trash.
The most repulsive racial jokes about Latinos.
Disgusting and hateful.
So incredibly crude. Frankly, just too X-rated to play here.
Extremely vile so-called jokes.
Extremely vile so-called jokes. She name-checked my comedy album from the 90s. Did I really? I don't know who's AI, me or that guy. Now, obviously, in retrospect, having a roast comedian come to a political rally a week before Election Day and roasting a key voting demographic, probably not the best decision by the campaign politically. But to be fair, the guy's really just doing what he does. I mean, here he is at the Tom Brady roast a few months ago.
The great Jeff Ross, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff is so Jewish, he only watches football for the coin toss. Gronk, you look like the Nazi that kept burning himself on the ovens. Kevin is so small that when his ancestors picked cotton, they called it deadlifting.
Yes, of course. Terrible, boo, yes. There's something wrong with me. I find that guy very funny. So, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, bringing him to a rally and have him not do roast jokes, that'd be like bringing Beyonce to a rally and not have... Oh.
Yeah. How about that? You bring a comedian and don't let him do comedy. It's kind of like bringing a singer who's not going to sing, except that's exactly what happened at the last Kamala Harris rally down in Houston, where they brought in Beyonce and everyone thought they were getting a concert, which is why a lot of people showed up. And then she gave like a few-minute speech. Who cares what you have to say? People pay for you to sing. They came for you to sing. If you're there, isn't that what you're about? No. And Jon Stewart is saying something that's decidedly true and has always been true, which is that comedy's supposed to be funny. People are supposed to do what they do. You got hired to do a comedy set. That's what he came to do. And he also, if you listen to what Kill Tony says in his bit, he goes, look, man, I don't usually follow the national anthem and RFK Jr. Like, I don't normally come in after, this is not a seriously easy comedy, setup to walk into. Usually you have a warm-up act and then you have the main act, whatever. That's not how these people are set up. So good for him. He went out there and did his thing. Jon Stewart knows it. No sense of humor over there in the Democrat Party, it seems like, which is a shame because comedy used to be able to roast everybody. Maybe that's why Saturday Night Live has been going back and making some of this fun, because our comedian, like our politicians are comical. Like, they're not funny, but the way that our world is so jacked up, it is funny in some ways. We should be able to at least laugh at this stuff. That's what we used to have in common as American. We would lampoon our leaders. And speaking of leaders that definitely needed some lampooning, but didn't get nearly enough of it, has been on a pedestal and treated as though he was untouchable. I'm just remembering. Kill Tony did, seriously, in like 15 seconds, he did a Jew joke, a Nazi joke, and a black slave joke, like all right up in front. You know where you can't do that? You can't do that when you're hanging out with people like Barack Obama. I made the argument that words mean something, that words used to mean something, whether it be refugees, whether it be migrant, whether it be the word asylum, whether it be the word fascist. These things actually have a meaning. And as a proper country, we used to know that. Here's a really kind of fun interview with Thomas Sowell, who says something shocking that you've probably heard here very recently. Fascist has a direct meaning, and it perfectly describes the way that not just the Obama administration has done it, but the Biden and the Harris administration have done it in the social media sphere and trying to get companies to do their way. It's called fascism. They're accusing Donald Trump of being the thing that has been obvious that they've been involved in. Check out the definition of fascism being used properly.
Talk about President Obama. Do you think he's a socialist?
Not technically, I suppose, because socialism usually means the government ownership of the means of production. The pattern he's following is much more like that of the fascists, where the government leaves the means of production in private hands and the politicians tell them what to do. And that's much more politically viable, because after the government forces the private industry to do something and it turns out disastrously, you can always haul the people from private industry up before congressional committees, denounce them on television and so forth, leaving out the fact that it was you who forced them to do what they did.
And this is the way you see, for example, the health care reforms that were passed.
Well, I was thinking actually about the financial reforms, and particularly the housing collapse. That the people who, Barney Frank in the House, Senator Chris Dodd in the Senate, were the people who pushed for all kinds of mortgage lending standards to be reduced, making mortgage lending enormously more risky than it had ever been before. And when all of that collapsed, they then summoned all the leaders of financial institutions up before their committees and spent hours denouncing them and so forth on nationwide television. I mean, they understand that the best defense is a good offense. And so this is great political theater. It has nothing to do with reality.
Oh, political theater, nothing to do with reality. Government goes up there and puts on these sham hearings. They're all doing it, aren't they? Isn't it interesting, though? We're talking about something very specific. Doing fascism in America is actually palatable because it's a little easier than socialism. It's one step removed. It's brilliant. It's what they do. Folks, if you guys want to support the program, you want to support guys like Mike Lindell who are out there in this fight that have been worried about election integrity for quite a long time, go to mypillow.com/Kyle. Again, mypillow.com/Kyle. KYLE is the promo code you can use when you guys go there. I went and looked at the website. One of the things they have on there right now is an 8-pack of socks that comes out to $3.75 a pair, which is a pretty good deal for a pair of socks. If it's kind of a disposable thing. The thing I like is that they're made in America. So if you're in the market for new socks, footwear, that actually is something that's like, I was looking at it and went, I actually do need some new socks. Check them out. Check out all the other stuff. They've got deals on the pillows. They got deals on the mattress toppers and the slippers and the sandals and all that kind of stuff. They've got a closeout right now doing 80% off. It's mypillow.com/Kyle. That'll take you to a landing page with all the deals, and it should auto-populate. KYLE is the promo code. $75 or more, you get free shipping. So that's an easy thing to hit for most people. A lot of these orders we see out there, some of you people are nuts. You go out there and spend like $1,000. But holidays are coming up, and it is time for those kind of things. I will not leave you without a great palate cleanser, something we've got a little bit of a PSA for the white dudes for Harris. Yep, we're going to have to do that. It's probably not going to be, this is going to be something you're going to want to show your friends that seem like they've got the wrong yard sign up. Before we do that, how about a 5-star review coming in from Redabug1 from the middle of 2 weeks ago, I guess. New subscriber here, 5 stars. I'm really enjoying listening to Kyle's podcast. It's clear, concise discussions with insight that only a recovering FBI agent can deliver. We appreciate that, Redabug. Thanks for joining the program. Thanks for being a subscriber. Thanks for sharing the program for those you like. And here's what we do. A little bit of comedy, a little bit of silliness. This is my favorite ER doctor from Instagram giving some PSA advice for the white dudes for Harris.
Hi, this is your friendly neighborhood ER provider reminding you that nothing accidentally goes into your butt. It might accidentally stay there, though. No, you did not slip in the shower. No, it wasn't there when you woke up. We might have been born at night, but not last night. And it's not our first rodeo. Doesn't look like it's yours either. But please, be honest with us. We don't judge. We don't care what you do at home. We just want you to be safe in all your freakiness. Use things that are specifically made for the task. Things that you can retain. Things that you can retrieve. You don't want something to get away from you, especially up your butt. So please, take care of yourselves and each other.
That's a real thing. It's a real problem. And if you've ever worked in an emergency room, you've probably had way too many of those patients. And there's always some excuse. Nobody ever owns it. Yeah, be careful. White dudes for Harris. Exit only, as the chat just accurately stated. Thanks all of you for being here today. Thanks for enjoying that weird, quirky breed of humor that we like to share. Make sure you go out there and tell your friends about this show. If you have not shared this with 1 or 2 people and said, hey, this is what I listen to, you guys might get a kick out of it. It's a slightly different perspective, and it might challenge you. I would really appreciate it if you do. Doesn't matter whether you're listening on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, whether you're watching us on Rumble or you're watching us on X. a little share would go a long ways. And remember, now on Spotify, the videos are getting uploaded not long after the audio is. So if you want to watch the video and if you had some issues, you could always use the Spotify app to go do that. We'll grow the audience over there where we can. Until tomorrow, God bless you. I appreciate you being here. Take care of each other. Take care of your neighbors. We will see you very soon. And tonight's call-in show, don't forget, it's at 8 p.m. for our subscribers.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.